Imitate gold, real gold. Now, nobody knows what magnets are. It's Lady Liberty. Did you ever hear of Lady Liberty? Don't take Tylenol. Don't take it. The wind is bull. I'll tell you.
Sir, why are you on the roof?
He's on the roof because it's the only place Eric can't find him. But this is
Tonight, Washington feels less like a capital and more like a fault line, rumbling, unstable, one tremor away from breaking open. And at the epicenter stands one woman, Attorney General Pam Bondi, a loyalist caught between the demands of the man who appointed her, President Donald Trump, and the rising fury of the movement that once adored him. Just months ago, Bondi practically scoffed at the idea there was anything left in the Epstein archive worth seeing. "It's all been released," she said. "Nothing more to uncover. Case closed. Move on." But then, something snapped. Not in Congress, not in the media. In the one place Trump believed he owned completely, the MAGA base. The revolt was volcanic. Influencers, die-hard loyalists, online generals of the right. They swarmed Bondi like a breach of the castle walls. They accused her of shielding elites, of burying evidence, of protecting the very establishment they believed Trump came to destroy. And behind the scenes, something even more impossible happened. Republicans began turning on Trump. House sources described it as a stampede. A surge of GOP lawmakers threatening to defy the White House and vote to force the release of the Epstein documents, with or without Trump's blessing. And just like that, everything shifted this week. Trump performed one of the most dramatic U-turns of his political life. After months of resisting transparency, he ordered his party to vote for the bill. He promised to sign it.
Mr. President, why wait for Congress to release the Epstein files? Why not just do it now?
As far as the Epstein files I have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein.
he's going to have to sign it, or at least he says he's going to sign it, which means there's about maybe a 12% chance he will. Trump hasn't been this nervous about signing something since Don Jr.'s birth certificate.
Overnight, Republicans fell into formation, but this wasn't strategy. It wasn't leadership. It was panic, because the base wasn't calming down. They wanted names. They wanted answers. They wanted blood. And to stop the bleeding, Trump told Bondi to do something extraordinary: open new investigations into Democrats once associated with Jeffrey Epstein, Bill Clinton, Reid Hoffman, Larry Summers. All three denied knowing anything about Epstein's crimes. But Trump didn't care. The fire was spreading and he needed fuel. But even as Bondi stepped in front of cameras and repeated the same line, "We will follow the law. We will release everything with maximum transparency."
We have released over 33,000 Epstein documents to the Hill, and we'll continue to follow the law and
No one believed her. Not the press, not Democrats, not Republicans, because they remembered the two facts she couldn't escape. She insisted the files were already released. She quietly circulated an unsigned memo hinting she wouldn't release anything at all. So what changed? Not the law, not the files, just the politics, and the fear that she was becoming the face of a cover-up. Bondi could have released the files months ago. She didn't need Congress. She didn't need a vote. She didn't need Trump's signature. She had the power. She didn't use it. And now Congress voted 427 Fayon to force her hand. Democrats, Republicans, everyone but one lonely holdout. Washington went from whispers to chaos. And into that chaos walked a voice America knows well. Good evening, I'm Jimmy. Reporting live from Hollywood, where we are tracking the most unpredictable storm in America, Hurricane Epstein. It's now a Category 5, expected to crash straight into the White House any minute. The audience laughs, but the tension underneath feels real. Kimmel continues, "Yesterday, Congress did something so rare I thought I hallucinated it. But the House and Senate voted overwhelmingly to release the long-buried Epstein documents. The vote was 427 to 1. That margin is so massive, Trump could bury the files under it and no one would find them." The crowd erupts. And now the Senate has shoved the bill onto Trump's desk. Normally, when Trump gets a bill, he declares bankruptcy and walks away. But this one he says he'll sign, meaning the odds he actually signs are, let's call it 12%. More laughter. And he's sweating. He hasn't been this nervous signing something since Don Jr.'s birth certificate. The studio howls. But don't worry, he's not the only one panicking. Speaker Mike Johnson spent months shutting down Congress just to avoid this bill. He tried to slip in an amendment saying, hey, maybe we should hide some names to protect the innocent. Kimmel smirks. Of course, Senate Republicans said no, which left poor Mike Johnson looking like he just got told Santa isn't real again. Audience laughter. And here's the wild part. These people defending Trump don't even know what is in the files. They're trusting a man who paid a porn star $130,000 and swears nothing happened. The audience roars. Kimmel leans in, lowering his voice. And even if Trump does sign, do we think the DOJ will release everything? Or will they hide it behind ongoing investigations? Especially investigations ordered by, you guessed it, Trump. He shrugs dramatically. Will we get the real Epstein files or the Trump remix Epstein files, Donnie's version? The crowd explodes. And off-screen, back in Washington, the laughter doesn't feel funny anymore. Because for all the jokes, all the satire, all the late-night punchlines, Washington wasn't laughing. Bondi stood in the crossfire, Trump stood on borrowed time, and the clock to release the files had officially started. 30 days to release every email, every classified memo, every internal DOJ note tied to Epstein. 30 days before Congress loses patience and seizes the documents themselves. A constitutional showdown decades in the making. And in the middle of it all, Bondi holding files she never wanted to open, Trump pushing for transparency he may not survive. And a country demanding answers no administration has ever dared give if Washington feels like a ship taking on water. The leak isn't in Congress. It isn't in the White House press room. It's between Donald Trump and his own Attorney General Pam Bondi. Because even as Trump marches out before cameras chanting
and will
total
continue to
transparency,
follow the law.
Bondi's behavior tells a different story, a quieter story, a cautious story. A story that contradicts every promise she's made so far. Even MSNBC's Nicole Wallace, who rarely agrees with conservatives, saw it. Bondi's actions and her words do not match, not even close. Bondi said she wants full disclosure, yet she's released no files. She said the investigation was complete. Then she tried to shut it down entirely, and she drafted an unsigned memo hinting she might not release anything at all. Republicans noticed, Democrats noticed, America noticed, and then Jimmy Kimmel noticed. Kimmel, on his show You Know the Situation's Gone Off the Rails, when Trump's own loyal chaos trio, Boebert, Green, and Mace, jump ship and vote to release the files. That's like the Three Stooges suddenly joining the police force. The crowd laughs. And the best part? Now Nancy Mace is groveling on every channel Trump watches, trying to win daddy's approval back. She's out here saying Trump might have been a hero, a whistleblower, maybe even Epstein's personal superhero. Kimmel raises an eyebrow. She says, there's nothing Trump can't do. Yeah, except a sit-up. The audience roars. And then she goes, I'm not part of the elite. I have no friends, just my dog. Kimmel pauses. Oh boy. Someone get Nancy a hug and a hobby. That interview turned into a therapy session real fast. Her desperation was humiliating. But it revealed something far more dangerous. The Republican Party wasn't unified anymore. Not behind Trump, not behind Bondi, not behind anyone. And in that power vacuum, shadows moved, whispers spread. Even friends of the president started asking whether Bondi was protecting the truth or protecting someone else. Then came the night that made everything worse. The Saudi dinner and the whispers that followed. Trump hosted a gilded dinner for Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, one of the most controversial figures connected to Epstein's orbit. The guest list was a who's who of wealth and power. Billionaires, hedge fund giants, defense lobbyists, Elon Musk, Stephen Miller, every member of the Republican donor class who had anything to lose if certain names were ever revealed. To the American public, it didn't look like diplomacy. It looked like a summit of people who desperately needed the Epstein files to stay buried. And the timing, perfect. or suspicious. Depending on who you ask, Kimmel, it looked like the Legion of Doom reunion. All they needed was a fog machine and Dr. Evil, audience laughter, and Melania. She had the same look you get when your Uber driver takes a wrong turn and locks the doors. The crowd erupts. And then Trump goes to the Saudi Investment Forum and starts talking to them about Easter eggs, plastic ones, real ones, egg economics. Kimmel shakes his head. Imagine being a Saudi investor and a former president is ranting at you about hard-boiled eggs. He speaks like he's translating himself from Russian through a blender. The audience roars. The jokes were funny, but the situation wasn't. Because while Trump cracked jokes and Bondi dodged questions, the countdown had already begun 30 days. 30 days for Bondi to release every document, every email, every classified note on Epstein. But she still refused to say how she would release them, or what would be redacted, or who she might be protecting, and that silence. It set off alarms. In Congress, in the press, inside the White House, inside Trump's own base. Because one fear was spreading faster than the scandal itself. What if the DOJ is preparing to black out names America expects to see? And what happens if Congress doesn't wait? What happens if they decide to take the files by force? What happens if Trump loses control of his own government? What happens if Bondi is cornered? What happens when the countdown hits 0? Because in the final hours of the night, after the laughter faded, after the cameras turned off, someone inside the West Wing whispered 2 words that shook the entire building. She's stalling. And if that's true, Washington is already out of time. To be continued.